Listen up, healthcare workers. In today's podcast, I am talking about the 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, who is a physician and a surgeon who was born in Mexico and had a near-death experience. And he devoted his entire life to studying a practice of his ancestors. And I want to share this with you because this book was a game changer for me. And somebody had just recommended it to me just recently. And I have to be honest with you, I had never read it before. I actually hadn't even heard of it before. But I love it when physicians write books and novels, and we can learn. Any healthcare practitioner who writes a book, in my world, it's extraordinary. So why am I so passionate about this podcast, The 4 Agreements? Well, Don teaches us in this book that there are these ancient 4 agreements that are a way for all of us here in life school to really find happiness and love what we do every day. I mean, sign me up. That's what I want to do. But I will tell you, when I think about that near-death experience that he had, and I'm not going to ruin it for you, you're just going to have to get the book or rent it at the library. It's remarkable. But I do love in this book how he really talks very openly about all of us here in our lives, here in life school, have an internal belief system that is specific to us, right? It's specific to our own life experiences. It's specific to what happens to us throughout the course of our life. And I love, love, love in the book how he calls this sort of belief system that we all innately have as our book of law. And I love that because he talks about it very openly and honestly, that this book of law is what rules our minds. And that makes perfect sense to me because, again, whatever is written down in your book of law, in your mind, is your truth, right? I mean, think about that. I mean, in fact, he states in the book that we have this inner judge, and we use what we've written down in our belief system to judge every experience we have from, right? So we judge what we do, we judge what we don't do. Pretty much everything is based on that internal belief system. And why am I so passionate about it? Because I think when you think about this and you really take a step back and a step up and you look at this sort of at a higher level, you will quickly see that everything you think or don't think, everything you feel or don't feel, everything that you do or don't do is based on your internal belief system. And we believe that it's because it's our book and that it's law, that it has to be true. Here's a little hint for you. That's why it takes incredible courage to challenge your own internal belief system. And I have sort of a special place in my heart for challenging my internal belief system because you know this, I've explained this to you before. I grew up in a religious cult, right? I spent my formidable years believing something or being meant to believe something that was true and so fixated, I had to spend decades of my life unlearning those beliefs. And I had to unlearn my own thinking. I had to challenge the way I looked at things. And what I love in this book is that Don Miguel points out that 95% of us, those personal beliefs that are all in our own systems, they are all untrue. And that is remarkable to me. So he points out in the book, there's this concept that he calls matote. And that's a condition where you really can't see who you truly are. And I love, love, love in the book how he talks a lot about because of this metote, we aren't able to see ourselves as truly alive. We're not able to see ourselves living the life that we were destined to live. And I love in the book how he talks about this on page 21. And I'm going to read a section of this because A, I think it's so incredibly important, and B, you need to find something to listen to while you're driving or heading off to work. So he says in the book, there are thousands of agreements you've made with yourself, with other people, and in these agreements you tell yourself who you are, what you feel, what you believe, and how to behave. And the result is what you call your personality. This is what I am. This is what I believe. I can do certain things and some things I cannot. If you want to live a life of joy and fulfillment, you have to find the courage to break the agreements that are fear-based and claim your personal power. There are 4 very powerful agreements that will help you break your fear and will remove the depletion of your energy. So let's talk about these 4 agreements. I love every single one of them. To me, they have incredible meaning. On page 26 of the book, he talks about the first agreement, which is to be impeccable with your word. And I absolutely love, love, love this concept. Be impeccable with your words, which Don Luis says is probably the most difficult agreement for most people to honor. And why does he say that? He recognizes that words have power. They have this ability to create beautiful things by the way we respond in times of stress. But we also have the ability to create hate and division, suffering and pain to other people by the way we respond. So listen to what Don says in the book about this first agreement of being impeccable with your words. He says the word is a force. It's a power you have to express and communicate, to think, and thereby to create the events of your life. You can speak, but like a sword with 2 edges, your word can create the most beautiful dream or destroy everything around you. One edge is the misuse of a word, which creates living hell. The other edge is the impeccability of the word, which will create beauty, love, and heaven on earth. So powerful that one word can change a life or destroy the lives of millions of people. And boy, does that settle in, because he talks about it right afterwards. He sort of shares this idea of Hitler was a perfect example of someone who activated fear in people simply by using words. And in the book, Don Luis reminds us that when we think about all the words that have been told to us throughout the whole course of our entire life, we can't help but recognize that there's a place in our mind where we begin to believe them as our truths. Those things that people may have said to us all through the course of our life. Maybe someone said you were ugly or stupid or fat or lazy or whatever the term is. That agreement that you make with yourself has everything to do with remembering that what someone said about you stuck and it matters. So think about the people that you care for. Think about the people that you interact with, the patients and their family members, even your coworkers, like everyone that you come in contact with, not just at work, but at home, in life. Think about how our words, if we just use them in a way where we make sure that we're responding from a place of love instead of responding from an emotional state, how that really can impact and de-escalate and change your environment. See, being impeccable with your words, as Don Luis points out, is really about you never going against yourself. It's that you recognize that you are so skilled as a professional healthcare worker that, of course, if something happens, it has nothing to do with you. So one of the things that I think is fascinating in this book about that first agreement, being impeccable with your words, is Don Luis talks about the power of gossiping and how it can really have an impact on the way people see other people and the way they interact with other people. And follow me with this concept. I mean, think about it. He talks about it in the book a little bit about, why people naturally go to a place where they're gossiping and talking about other people. And I want you to imagine your workplace. And if you have a workplace where nobody's gossiping, then it's like, wow, this is amazing, right? There's so many times when people will get into the habit of gossiping, right? And then very quickly we can be looped in, and now we find ourselves gossiping and we're like, wait, how did that happen? It happens that quickly. But he says in the book that, it really comes from a place sometimes where people want to be in a place where they can recognize that someone's worse off than they are. And let that settle in just for a moment. Like when we're there and we're talking about people in a negative way, right? We're the healers, right? We know that's not going to help heal people, right? We know that's not going to make any condition that we're working in better or stronger or more effective, especially for the people we provide care to, including their family members. But instead, it can make someone worse. It can take them 3 steps down. And it's really hard for people to do when they're here in life school. So I'm going to remind you, if you don't want to be in that dark place, you don't want to be in that place where people are complaining. Some of that is a commitment that you have to give yourself. You have to recognize that this might be a pattern that I might be stuck in. This might be something that I'm finding myself in because this was a habit, a strong habit of something maybe that I was exposed to through my entire life, right? And I get something from that. And if you don't want to be in that dark place, then listen, always send love out instead. It's very easy to redirect people. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you there have been times when I've been caught gossiping. Of course, we all do, right? We're humans. But I think what we want to do is recognize that, when we think about this idea of we have to be impeccable with all of our words, that is a constant reminder that in healthcare, if we're going to build one another up, if we're going to do this great work that we're going to do, which is care for people that are sick, not well, and never at their personal best, we're only going to do this as a team. And that means all of us coming together, working 100% in a way where we are showing love and compassion towards one another, and we're creating the conditions for us to thrive. And listen, when somebody's angry, just throw them some love instead. That impeccability in your words, that's going to grant you freedom, like Don talks about in the book. It'll be like a personal freedom where you're not going to be operating from a place of being afraid anymore. You're going to recognize that there's no place for frustration for you because you're not making a conscious choice to accept it. Instead, you want to operate in a place where there's joy and there's love and there's happiness and there's hope, and that you're surrounded by it. Okay, so the second agreement that Don Luis talks about in his book, this is a favorite one for me because, boy, was this a journey for me in life school. And it is don't take anything personally. I'm going to repeat that one again because some of you need to hear it again. Don't take anything personally. And you have to recognize, he says it in the book on page 56, and I do want to read this to you because I think it's so important. He says it in the book that you must always recognize when something happens to you, it's never about you. It's about what that person is going through and their experience, and all of that frustration is just coming out and being directed at you. So I love what he says in the book about not taking things personally. He says, we don't take things personally because by taking things personally, you set yourself up to suffer for nothing. Humans are addicted to suffering at different levels and to different degrees. Humans agree to help each other suffer. If you have the need to be abused, you'll find it easy to be abused by others. Likewise, if you're with people who need to suffer, something in you makes you abuse them. It's as if they have a note on their back that says, "Please kick me." They're asking for justification for their suffering. Wherever you go, you will find people lying to you. Don't expect people to tell you the truth because they also lie to themselves. You have to trust yourself, and you have to choose to believe or not to believe what someone says to you. And when we really see other people as they are, without taking it personally, we can never be hurt by what they say or do. Even if others lie to you, it's okay. They're lying to you because they're afraid. And he says here on the other page, when you make it a strong habit not to take anything personally, you avoid many upsets in your life. Your anger, jealousy, and envy will soon disappear. And even your sadness will simply disappear if you learn not to take anything personally. Now listen, I'm going to tell you, for this agreement in the beginning, I will tell you a little secret of what works for me. Listen, I've just learned here in life school to keep my expectations very low. Keep those expectations very low so you will be pleasantly surprised and you won't be annoyed and you won't be frustrated. I try really hard to remind myself that people are not perfect. You know this. In stressful situations, which is healthcare, right? Everything's unpredictable and you are working under extremely stressful conditions. Typically, you're only going to see the bad behaviors surfacing out in people. And so when something happens and you happen to be in that person's present, repeat after me. It's not about me. It's about them. And you make a conscious choice not to be activated. And I think that's so incredibly important because think about all the people that you interact with every single day. It's insanely crazy. And so there are a lot of people navigating this earth that are coming into the workplace, that are coming into your healthcare centers, that have had like everything possible for them go wrong in that moment, the moments leading up to it. And you know how that feels, right? And so you just happen to be the last straw. And so instead of responding in a way where you're frustrated or annoyed or angry, or you're allowing that person to get under your skin, instead you're going to master this agreement of, I am going to learn how not to take things personally. And again, if you do this, you're going to achieve this personal freedom because things are going to look differently for you. I love the third agreement in this book, which is not to make assumptions. He says, don't make assumptions. Now listen, this one's hard for me. You're always going to hear me admit and raise my hand when something's really, really hard for me. Why is this one hard for me? I think as humans, for me in particular, you know, some of the stuff that's wired into my brain is when people tell me things, I'm assuming it for the way it comes across, and I tend to believe that as truth. So that's where my mind goes very, very quickly. I can see myself kind of going to that place where I'm not asking questions in curiosity to get clarity. Instead, whatever somebody says, it's like, okay, right? So you can see this cycle, right? I mean, this happens to most of us here in life school. And that's why these agreements are so incredibly important. And Don talks about in the book, like when we tend to believe something is true, very, very quickly, we can find ourselves taking all these things personally. And he reminds us that when we make assumptions, we invite a whole lot of problems into our world. And I love, love, love in the book how Don talks about this. It's on page 68 of the book. He talks about this and he says, this is just remarkable to me. I think this is just such a great concept. He says, these assumptions are made so fast and unconsciously, most of the time, because we have agreements to communicate this way. We've agreed that it is not safe to ask questions. We've agreed that if people love us, they should know what we want or how we feel. When we believe something, we assume that we are right about it to the point that we will destroy relationships in order to defend our positions. We make the assumption that everyone sees life the way we do. We assume that others think the way we think and feel the way we feel, judge the way we judge, and abuse the way we abuse. This is why we have a fear of being ourselves around others, because we think everyone else will judge us. And I, again, think this is so incredibly important, because when we make assumptions in the field of healthcare, I want you to think about the detrimental effects it has on a person's well-being. We are professional healthcare workers. We're operating from our own perspective rather than the perspective of the patients we're caring from. And sometimes that means unconsciously you can cause harm in care delivery because you assumed something to be true instead of taking the time out to ask clarifying questions. And Don points out all of those reasons why we don't do it. And I just want to believe for most of us, it's mostly coming from a place of fear. Like people are afraid that if you ask a question, you're going to appear like you don't know something or that you're going to feel stupid. And I think we have to normalize that in healthcare. I think we have to normalize this idea that we ask questions in clarity because we don't want to make assumptions about how a person is receiving information that we might be teaching or how they might be feeling when we're providing care delivery. You know this in life. Everything that has happened to us through the course of our lives. And I've seen this sometimes with healthcare workers. People haven't done a good job recognizing that they've gone through experiences in their life where they had extreme challenges, extreme difficulty, physical abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse, all kinds of ways people have been abused, disrespected, and made to feel unworthy. And because we are not dealing with that in an appropriate way and seeking the care that we need to heal our hearts from those experiences, it triggers something in us and we respond differently instead. And I'm going to remind you, as a healthcare worker, as a professional healthcare worker, it takes incredible courage to be able to look at it from that perspective. And I will always educate you on training your mind to, whenever there's any situation that happens that catches you off guard or by surprise, instead of pointing the fingers at the person for all the reasons why, take that step back and that step up and look at it from a higher perspective. What could you have done differently in that situation? How could you have responded or reacted differently? Because you're a healthcare professional and you have this incredible superpower, which is your heart and your mind is wired to compassion and love and empathy. And those of you that are in the field where that's not where you're wired from, but you managed to sneak in, I'm going to remind you it's an opportunity in here in life school to learn a different way to provide care. We're dealing with the most vulnerable of people in their most vulnerable of moments. And they deserve to receive care in a way that it's from an individual whose heart and mind is focused on love, compassion, and empathy at its core. And I absolutely love the fourth agreement, which is Don Lewis says, we always do our best, regardless of the situation or regardless of what's happening around us. And why do I love that? Because to do your best, there are so many things that you have to consider that are so incredibly important. Like, think about all the factors that feed into your ability to do your best. Sleep, eat, rest, pain, emotional pain, stress, stuff going on at home, stuff going on at work. Right? You can see how all this affects your ability to be your best. So I will always educate you on you cannot change what's happening around you ever in this world. The only thing you have control over is how you respond in the moment and the decisions that you make and take. And I love on page 78 of the book how Don talks about this interesting reflection regarding this ability to gain consistency with learning all these skills here in life school so that you can be the best you can be in every single situation. He says, doing your best, you're going to live your life intensely. You're going to be productive. You're going to be good to yourself because you will be giving yourself to your family, to your community, to everything. When you always do your best, you take action. Doing your best is taking the action because you love it, not because you're expecting a reward. Most people do the exact opposite. They only take action when they expect a reward, and they don't enjoy the action. And that's the reason why they don't do their best. Most people go to work every day just thinking about payday, the money they will get from the work they're doing. They can hardly wait for Friday or Saturday. They're working for the reward, and as a result, they resist work. They try to avoid the action, and it becomes more difficult, and they don't do their best. They work so hard all week long, suffering the work, suffering the action, not because they like to, but because they feel like they have to. They try to escape. They try to get drunk because they don't like themselves. They don't like their life. There are so many ways that we hurt ourselves when we don't like who we are. And that just is so profound to me. When you really, really think about this, when you really think about your journey here in life school and this idea that the way you interact with people and the ability of you as a human to take this superpower that you have, which is your ability to show empathy in any situation, which I can tell you is quite hard, takes a lot of patience, and you have to be willing to do it. But your ability to sit in a place of empathy every single time is going to be your ability to be able to want to live the best life you can live for the benefit of the people that you have in your environment. And for some of you, this book is going to mean you got to learn how to break some of these old agreements that are holding you back. Listen, I'm not going to cover everything in this book because there's so many great insights in this book. But I absolutely love in the book how Don Lewis equates our lives, and he gives this description of what it's like to be a parasite. And, for those of you in healthcare, you know this, like a parasite doesn't gross you out. You absolutely understand and know its purpose. But he says in the book, and he talks about the purpose of a parasite and what it does. It's a living being that lives off of other beings, simply to hurt the host. It gives no useful contribution to society, right? It just sucks the energy out of people. And so that makes me really think, like, if you want to live a life that's full of joy and happiness, it's always going to be looking inward. It's always going to be you really recognizing that you've got to gain mastery with self-awareness. That's step one in life school. That means you got to know who you are, and you got to know who you aspire to be. And you got to be willing to change and want to transform. And for some of you that are sitting out there, I know what you're thinking, because boy, I've seen this in action with people. Sometimes that requires tremendous faith. It means that you have to trust that the things that are happening to you at this moment are for a reason that are unknown to you. There is something you are meant to learn here in life school as a result. And with time, all things get revealed, right? It's not us forcing our way through. And this is a really hard one for me, because during the pandemic, I went to some of the darkest places I had ever been. Like, my soul went to those dark places. I was a person that was designed to care for people. As a registered nurse, my brain could not comprehend that the way I was providing care was potentially harmful to people. That really rocked me to my core. It made me really think about who I was as a healer and a person. And where I struggled with this for several years was I didn't understand why it happened. Now I know why it happened, because I'm here talking to all of you. I'm here educating you so that you can begin to look at things from that same lens. You know, it makes me think about like a video of like a person that forces a butterfly that's in its chrysalis out of the chrysalis too early, and how that completely destroys a butterfly's ability to transform. And I know it seems metaphorical, but really when you think about it, everything happens in our lives for a time that's meant to be. And when we force things, when we do things and it really isn't the time, or when we're rushing and we're not slowing down our pace, or we're not giving ourselves some time to sit in silence, we're not allowing ourselves time to achieve clarity. When we're not doing those things, we're doing a disservice to ourselves as healers. I mean, you know this. We can't change the past. The past is the past. It happened. Those experiences happened for that reason, that at some point in our life, we're going to see it. It'll be like that aha moment, like, oh boy, I can see it now, right? 100%. But what's within our power, our complete power, is our ability to learn how to always, in every given situation, show love, empathy, and compassion every single time, regardless of what is happening around us. And I know some of you are sitting there thinking that is not possible because I can't get there. Yes, you can. You can transform to become anything, because you are a living being, and everything is in the power of your mind and your heart. When these two are connected, you can do tremendous things. And when we can get a workforce where people really see that this is what they were destined to do, not just care for people and get them better, but look at the how they do it in care delivery, to make those meaningful moments so full of power that that moment in time for that individual, the world slows down and begins to almost get to a pace where time stands still. And in that moment where time is standing still, you can see the impact you've had on the life of an individual who needed you in that moment. And there is tremendous power with that. Listen, I hope that you enjoyed this podcast. I hope you take a listen to this book, The Four Agreements, by Don Miguel Ruiz, A Practical Guide to Personal Freedom. I love this book. I wish I had it many years ago. But more importantly, I hope that the work you do every single day, you realize that it has meaning and purpose. And even though you're experiencing challenges, it's your approach and your ability to get better every single day, to show the world your greatest superpower, which is you are a healer and you're making the world a better place every single day. And for that, we can transform healthcare altogether. Listen, I hope you join me on a future podcast. Goodbye, everyone.